Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you are, and welcome to another episode of Take the Points, a true underdog podcast. How's it going, everybody? You have Robbie here. It is officially Thursday, October 23rd. I'm recording this at 8:15 mid-Red Wings game. Currently down 2-0, unfortunately. Good to be back, though. Good to be on. I know Steve Wilson and I, we've been a little bit sporadic over the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think the last time I got on, we were, at least I was, I think, single-handedly talking about the tough Tigers marathon loss. I'd like everyone to know I'm doing okay. I'm still repping my Tigers hat today. But yeah, just a lot going on in the world of sports. Wanted to make sure that I got on here to kind of come and talk to the people. Shout out to my buddy Ryan. That was like, where is the podcast, bud? We got to get something out. So yeah, apologies on the kind of infrequent recordings here. We've just been a little busy with family life. I know Wilson and Steve with their kiddos have been traveling for work. Just a lot of things going on. But we are here tonight, at least I am, to talk sports. And boy, do we have a lot to catch up on. So many things going on in the world of sports. So let me just kind of give you a preview of what I would like to cover in the next 45 minutes to an hour. We'll see how long my voice lasts. But definitely want to start with just what's top of mind for me, which is kind of the NBA news that broke today. Obviously, NBA season kicked off here this week. A little bit of Pistons talk, but really want to talk about this Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups story. Obviously, Chauncey Billups, a hero here in Detroit, but some of this gambling, poker stuff going on. So just want to give a quick thought on that. Then I definitely want to spend some time on the Lions coming off a loss to Kansas City and then a really fantastic victory against Tampa Bay. They're currently on bye this week. So just kind of a good week to do, we're 7 games into the season, kind of do a pulse check on the Lions and kind of how things are trending. Then I definitely want to jump into the Wings as well. They're off to a hot start to start the season. They're losing tonight, unfortunately, but still have seen some really great things from the Wings. Everybody knows on here. I get it. I've been tough on them. I know, but we're going to talk about it. And we obviously have Michigan State coming up this weekend, football. Let's see who's going to tune in for that. That should be an interesting night game. 2 teams that I don't think are very good, but nonetheless, we're in Michigan. It's Michigan State. We got to talk about it. So yeah, so that's kind of going to be the agenda. We'll see how close I can actually stick to that. But let's start with this betting kind of news story that broke this morning. For those sports fans out there that live under a rock, you may not have heard, but I'm assuming most people have heard. Kind of broke across. I think it was a little bit earlier this morning, but just going to highlight kind of some thoughts here. But Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, both were arrested early this morning on Thursday in relation to some illegal gambling / betting situations that were taking place, things that should not be going on. So 2 kind of separate issues here. One is, Portland Trailblazers coach Chauncey Billups, also known as Mr. Big Shot here in Detroit. Chauncey's in a little bit of trouble. So apparently Chauncey was involved in a separate indictment, essentially, that was related to rigging underground poker games that were backed by the mafia families. So let's just restate that, okay? So illegal poker games that were taking place, essentially funded by mafia families. Chauncey Billups was essentially, what they kind of said here was happen is Chauncey would kind of be the point man in these illegal poker games that were taking place, right? So he would show up. He's legitimate. Everybody that was there, though, was in on the ruse, except for these these high valued individuals that were essentially getting swindled and cheated out of money. But Chauncey was involved, according to this indictment. Obviously, has to be proven by his peers. But this indictment says that he was knowingly participating in this, right? He kind of was essentially bringing legitimacy to this poker game, but everybody around that was involved essentially knew that this was not a legitimate poker game. They had a variety of different schemes that they were using, which was something that would look at the cards that this player had, then it would get voiced into all the players at the table, so then they understood kind of who had the best hand and when to fold, when not to fold. Just crazy. Not super sports related here. I mean, we'll see. Coach of the Portland Trail Blazers. There's also some gambling stuff going on. His team was involved with Terry Rozier. Is there any connection there? Who knows? Either way, it's related to sports. We're in Detroit. It's Chauncey Billups, Mr. Big Shot, jersey retired, iconic Pistons player, well-respected around the league, kind of came up from nowhere, really kind of grew into this, I think, very well-respected guard and coach. Just really unfortunate to see this. The first thing that comes to my mind is, man, how much money did you make in the NBA? Did you really have to go and do this in the legal gambling poker game with the mafia? Does not sound like the right thing to be doing. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, no longer with Portland. I think he's temporarily suspended. We'll see what happens in the long run. But, this is definitely going to damper Chauncey's, reputation, of course. I mean, I don't too early to say what it's going to do for his time in Detroit. Clearly, it doesn't change the fact that he was an incredible basketball player for the Pistons, Mr. Big Shot. Apparently he's Mr. Big Shot when it comes to poker, I guess. There's a lot of different kind of puns that we could play with Chauncey. But yeah, just really sad to see. We'll see what kind of comes out over the coming weeks. But the more concerning part of this story to me really had to do with this Terry Rozier stuff. So anyone knows Terry Rozier, I think it was last year, something similar kind of came out that there was essentially what was happening is Terry Rozier was involved in a situation where there were not normal bets essentially taking place across sports books that were for unders on a lot of different players. And so Terry Rozier initially got interviewed and why can I not think of the word? Essentially there was a analysis that was done on kind of what happened, an investigation, I should say. Wow, really struggling there to get that out on Terry Rozier last year by the NBA. They found that investigation. Essentially, he was cleared by the NBA, but the FBI actually was the one that kind of announced the charges today. But Terry Rozier essentially was really kind of got nailed along with former player and now coach Damon Jones. Illegal sports betting and rigged, essentially these rigged bets that were happening, which is extremely, extremely sad to see. But essentially they said as part of the scheme, gamblers used non-public information to bet on at least 7 NBA games between March 2023 and March 2024. The Hornets, Magic, Blazers, Lakers, and Raptors were all involved in 3 of the 7 games. Players intentionally removed themselves from contests to benefit the gamblers' bets, according to the indictment. So these defendants, which would have been Terry Rozier here and Damon Jones, had access to private information known by NBA players or NBA coaches that would likely affect the outcome of games or players' performances. And so essentially they would have someone else kind of front these bets. For example, saying, let's say, Terry Rozier, I think I saw for an example, was supposed to play in a game. He said he was going to go out. With 7 minutes in, he went down with an injury, in quotes. A ton of people had bet the under on his stats. It obviously hits. I think it was like $200,000 in bets went out on the unders. They all hit and ended up being millions of dollars. But just really sad to see this. Like, we don't have to get into all the details of what happened. This just adds fuel to the fire, I think, of some of the hypocrisy that we're seeing across the leagues. And listen, do I bet on games? Yes. Do a ton of my buddies bet on games? Yes. Do people that listen to this podcast bet on games? Yes. It's just so difficult for me as someone that just loves sports so much. When I see these stories pop up, and it's been mostly the NBA where this has lived, it can't help but make you think, is this happening more frequently and we just don't know about it? I think it's so fascinating that these leagues are all about integrity, all about the integrity of the game. But then when it comes to these gambling things, every TV show or every team is sponsored by some type of gambling partner. They're actually reporting on live odds during the game. They have a dedicated person that sits at the sideline that talks about the odds. It just seems, again, to use that word hypocrisy. These guys obviously took it too far, right? Someone like Terry Rozier and Damon Jones saw an opportunity here. Who knows what was going on in the background, but Sure, 7 games, 8 games. If it's one game, it doesn't matter, right? And the NBA has had issues in the past, right? With Tim Donahue, I think the ref that got in trouble said, oh, it never impacted the outcome of the game. Now you have this. You had the Malik Beasley situation, which I just saw today. He was cleared by the NBA, but the FBI is still investigating him. I mean, the one thing that sports has had outside of anything else in life, right, is it becomes an escape. And it's that vibe that every given Sunday, any given Sunday, your team, whether they're favored by 20 or underdogs by 20, when it steps to the court, the football field, the ice rink, right? Like your team has a chance to win. Baseball diamond, what have you, right? Look at the Tigers last year, how improbable that was for them to make the playoffs. When stuff like this happens, it makes you think, though, is there some larger scheme that's going on that we're just not aware of? And I've defended sports my entire life. I've had a lot of people that I know that have said, oh, here we go again. The big teams are getting favorites. The league's got it out. They don't want this team to win or they don't want that team to win. And listen, do I think that there's some bending of rules or favoritism that goes toward a certain team? Yes. Yes, I do. We talk about the Lions against Kansas City. Did I think the NFL wanted the Lions to win that game? Nope. Did I think they wanted Kansas City to win that game? Yep. Do I think that they drastically impacted the game? Not necessarily. Do I think there was some sketchy stuff that happened? Yeah, I do. But when it relates to this gambling stuff, this is happening amongst the players. And a lot of it has to do with the type of bets that are being offered, right? These prop bets that exist. I mean, you can bet on a guy that maybe he's going to get 2 minutes in the game. You can bet over, under on his points, assists, rebounds. For some of these guys that aren't making a lot of money in the league, you got someone that comes to you and says, hey, listen, we got to prove it type scheme we're going to set up. Nobody will ever know, just, go under tonight on assists or under tonight on rebounds. And, we'll give you, a full year of your salary in one game. I mean, you get how these young players trying to make it for themselves and their family, maybe say, okay, or maybe they get into a little trouble in gambling, which they also said came out in the investigation today with Porter, who played in the NBA, that's no longer in the NBA. They said he was forced to continue. He was a former player that got busted for this too. He had gambling debts, and essentially these mobsters, right, and these people that host these kind of gambling houses said, hey, you got to give us information to pay your debt off. I mean, this sounds like we're listening to The Godfather or some crazy movie here where there's these conspiracy theories happening. And it's just damaging. It's damaging for, and again, not that I speak for all sports fans out there, but I'm not, against gambling in sports. I mean, I think it brings a lot of revenue to the teams. I think you look at a sport like maybe hockey or some of these other sports, I wouldn't say football, where there can be a struggle for money. And it's really important to have this additional funds coming in. So then your team can, sign players, et cetera. But when the integrity of the game starts to get damaged, that's where I start to have a problem. And this is the hardest thing to recover because this is now the third, fourth, fifth instance that this has happened in the NBA. And you just can't help but think over time, there's just going to be more and more and more that this is going to come out. And I think it's really going to test people's patience. I think it's going to test people's ability to still watch the game and feel that it's, the outcome is decided in the game versus some, pre-game situation that's happening. How many times have you seen a player, miss a shot or miss a layup that you're like, man, that looked easy, right? Now, every time that happens, and this is obviously to the extreme, do you do a double take on that? Do you think, that guy normally makes that? It's kind of weird he didn't. Oh, wait, he just went out of the game? Are you thinking in your mind, hey, was there a bet that happened? Again, I think that's probably to the extreme, but this is more of a larger conversation around kind of gambling and the impact that it's had on sports in general, whether you're a professional athlete or a, couch coach like myself that always has something to say about a game. With the open of your phone, click on an app, I could drop $100 on any bet that I want to, right? That doesn't require me to go to Vegas anymore or go to a casino. And the leagues were faced with a really tough option, and they decided to get in bed with these kind of sports site, and the money was there. And so money rules. And now I think these leagues are at the mercy of a lot of these betting sites, right? The FanDuels and all these other ones, that the BetMGM and all these other apps that exist out there. And this is just really sad to see. And I hope that they can get a handle on this. I hope they can catch all the people that are doing this. And I will just be curious to see what's going to happen. What's going to be the long-term impact on this? And NBA has been the one that's been hammered the most. But don't be fooled. This can go across any game in any league with any player. And, this isn't just something like Chauncey Billups that's doing this illegal poker thing. When it's actual players that play these games, that you have any sense that there is some lack of integrity or some ulterior motive, that is just impossible to reconcile, and so hard for me to imagine how a league recovers from that. And in a situation where we know that the NFL is king, continues to be king, these, NBA, doesn't probably have a lot of room to give here in a situation like this. So, when the FBI gets involved, you start seeing these, big name players. A guy like Chauncey's got a ton of rapport in the NBA. Obviously, his was more this poker situation. It's still gambling related, though. You hope that this gets recovered. I mean, the reality is, what are you going to do here? What you think they're going to go back and say you can't bet anymore? That's never going to happen. Never. Could you see a situation where they try and limit the player props and all that? Sure. The question here is this: a couple bad actors that did some things, or is this just the initial layer of a deep, deep interweb of, just improprieties that are happening across the NBA and sports in general? I sure hope this is just a couple of bad actors, but I would be lying if I said to you that I didn't have some belief in my mind that there's just more times that this is going on, and it will impact the way that I watch games moving forward if this continues to grow. I mean, am I still watching the Pistons game thinking that, some Paul Reed, the backup center on the Pistons, is betting himself on the under so he's not getting a board? Like, no. And I'm never going to do that. I can't live in a world where that's how my mind works. If it ever gets to that point, then I'm probably just going to shut the TV off and stop watching sports, because sports is the one place in this world where you can turn on the TV no matter what kind of day you've been having. You see your favorite team on, and you're instantly in the game, right? You feel like you're a part of the game, whether win, lose, tie, what have you. You ride the emotional wave, and that's what makes sports great. When you start tuning in and questioning the integrity and what the outcome is, and not feeling like everything on the court is legitimate, that is when we're going to have a problem. The NBA is really tiptoeing right now on that, and just stupidity across the board from Chauncey, from Terry Rozier, from Damon Jones. They should boot everybody that this was happening to. I think they need to do a full clean out here. People should face prison time. It's just not right. It's and it's just not fair. And we will see what comes from it. Chauncey's jersey's not coming down at Little Caesars Arena, nor do I think it should. People make mistakes. You hope he learns from this. But the other stuff with the NBA is just bad. It's bad look for the NBA. NBA is going through a bit of a transition right now, right? They've been up and down on the ratings. You got some older players aging out. You got some youth coming in. So we'll see ultimately where this lands. This betting thing is really getting out of control. I've tried to stay away from it myself, but we'll see in the long term what happens. Now, you heard me mention, how does this relate to the Lions? Just kind of a quick transition here. Let's just do a quick update on the Lions here, kind of transitioning out of the betting piece. But Lions are 5-2. Last time we checked in, they were getting ready to face the Kansas City Chiefs, which unfortunately they lost that game to Kansas City. They then came back this previous Monday night to actually beat Tampa Bay, which was an awesome game. So let's just kind of break down where things sit now for the Lions. Going back to that Kansas City game, which I know is old news, something that has been still top of mind that happened in that game. Lions drove on the first drive all the way down. They took the ball, scored a touchdown. I was jumping up and down in my kitchen like, hell yeah. It was kind of a cool play. Goff was in the backfield. Then he kind of moved out in to be a receiver. He ends up getting a ball thrown to him right at the line, which was crazy. Great block on the edge to kind of get him in. Goff made a great catch on the ball that I think was thrown by David Montgomery or Amon-Ra. I think it was David Montgomery. touchdown, hands go up. Yep, all right, okay, let's kick the extra point. Wait, what's happening here? Oh my gosh, there's a flag. Wait, Goff didn't get set. Okay, interesting. Never heard of that rule. Welcome to the Lions. Of course, he's got to be set because he wasn't technically ever under center, so he's got to go stop for a second before he runs his route. Long story short, called the touchdown, end up calling the touchdown back. Lions got to delay a game, yada, yada, yada. They kicked a field goal. Ultimately, they lost the game. Do I think that this call was the reason they lost the game? No. They just did not play well at all. The whole point of this, though, is there was a ton of controversy because Dan Campbell came out after the game and said that he was told by an official that New York was the one that called in this penalty. So the refs on the field said it was good. New York, according to Dan Campbell, phoned in or, got in touch with the refs like they're able to do for certain calls, like if you were doing a review or if there was a spot situation or a booth review, what have you, and they'll go to New York to get a review. And one of the officials told Dan Campbell that that's what happened. They got the call from New York, which is what they called to reverse the call. But the reality is that's not allowed to do that, right? That's not a type of call that should go to New York. That's not how the NFL rules at least are currently set. So there was just a lot of controversy there saying, was this one of those situations where the league stepped in and said, wow, Lions just went down the field and scored. We see that there's a penalty here. The refs missed it on the field. We're going to call it in. NFL came out today. They were doing an interview, I think, on NFL Network, and the head of their officiating came out and said, no, you're nuts. New York never made that call. The refs just took more time. This goes back to the Lions, 7-8 years ago, maybe longer than that, against Dallas. When there's a pass interference against Dallas, I think it was in the fourth quarter on Brandon Pettigrew. They ultimately end up picking up the flag, which was insane. A ton of controversy there. Dallas ends up winning the game. Then you have last year with the Lions not reporting eligible, or 2 years ago with Taylor Decker. That got called back. You just, again, relating back to the NBA conversation, and then we'll jump into Lions talk, is you can't help but think, did the NFL want the Kansas City Chiefs to win that game? And I hate saying that because I don't want to be that fan, because I at my core don't believe in that. I don't want to believe in that, because that would, again, take away from the integrity that I've been talking about. But when you see a situation like that with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, do I think there's always favoritism toward a team like the Kansas City Chiefs? Yeah. Do I think the Buffalo Bills get the benefit of a few calls? Yes. Do I think the Lions get a benefit of the few calls? I honestly don't. I don't think they have in their history, and I don't think they will moving forward. They're not this sexy team like the Kansas City Chiefs are, right? And so that's where, when a situation like this comes up, Lions lost that game. They lost that game. They did not play well. They should have beat Kansas City. They did not lose on that one call. Now, Kansas City, I believe, had no penalties called on them the entire game. I think there was maybe one or two with the Lions declined for down purposes. But kind of crazy that a team that had a ton of penalties the week before, which Kansas City did, I think they had 10 or 15, get none called the following week, or one at the end of the game. Again, guys, I know I'm putting on the conspiracy hat. I don't want to do it, but I'm doing it because it relates to this NBA topic. And so I hope that's not the case, but I thought that Kansas City call was BS. This is the crap I don't like. Of you call something a touchdown, it's 2 minutes later the flag goes down, they call the touchdown back. We just got to get better at it. If we want this to go to New York, we want this to go to an automated review, which every score obviously is automated review, but that's for, did the ball cross the line, not was there a penalty on the play. And when something like that happens, and I believe in Dan Campbell, I think he's a very honest guy. He's never lied to the media. He's never lied to the fans. That's what makes him so great, right? He's a transparent, honest guy. For him to say multiple times, and he reluctantly said it on an interview on the radio when they said, did they say that they got it called in from New York? And he said, you could hear in his voice, he goes, yeah, they did. And I believe him. So whether that ref misspoke, whether something happened, either way, of course, if you look at where the articles are today, you can hardly find anything. There was no big investigation that happened after the game. If this was the Cowboys or the Chiefs that this happened to, you're damn right, there'd probably be a Supreme Court case on it. But because it's the Lions, that's just not how this league works. And so I do think that there was some favoritism there. Do I think it cost the Lions the game? No. Did they lose the game for a ton of other reasons? Yes. Do I think it was sketchy as hell? You're damn right I do. And somehow with the Lions, no matter what happens, there's always some new penalty, new rule that comes out when the Lions are playing. Always. We got the Calvin Johnson catch rule, right? We got the Brandon Pettigrew picked up pass interference. Taylor Decker didn't report. He did report, but he didn't report. Then you had the game against Kansas City. He's not set. He is set. Nope, he's not set. Just insane. NFL's got to get a handle on this because, again, I don't want this hypocrisy to creep in because, again, that's just not how I think sports should be played. But I thought it was a BS call against Kansas City. But either way, Lions lose that game. Also at the end of the game, Brian Branch, absolute jackass. Yes, he was getting chop blocked or whatever throughout the game. The refs didn't call it. Dude, don't go punching. Juju Smith-Schuster just was stupid on his part. He's already got a bad rap in this league as being dirty, right or wrong. He does. Same with a guy like Kirby Joseph. You remember Matthew Stafford a couple of years ago in the playoff was like, yeah, man, you're dirty. Everybody knows that you're dirty. Brian Branch is a great player. And from all accounts by his teammates, he's a great guy, cares about himself, cares about the community. When you do dumb shit like that, it really challenges people's ability to say, oh, yeah, you're a good guy. It just does. The game was over. You lost. Shake the hand. Don't shake the hand, but move on. Throwing punches, not what the Lions need. I just said, I already think the league's got it out for him anyways. We don't need more reasons to have this idea that these Lions are these thug players, right? Which I think is BS. Brian Branch made a mistake. It is what it is. But the mistake was just compounded by the fact that Kirby Joseph is hurt. And we just have major injuries in the secondary, right? Terrion Arnold out, also hurt. Reader, all right? DJ Reader, our big signing this offseason, cornerback, out. So when that happens, we go up against Tampa Bay coming up last weekend, and all of our starting secondary, including our safeties, are not playing. Thank you, Brian Branch. But let's talk about this Tampa Bay game. First of all, everyone's heard the stat. I think the Lions have not lost back-to-back games under Dan Campbell in like 4 years or whatever the heck the number is. Insane. This guy gets his team to respond. You had Tampa Bay Bucks coming into Detroit, Baker Mayfield, early MVP candidate. Bucks were rolling. Top of the NFC. Like I said, Baker's got MVP conversations. They got injuries all over the board. Their offensive line is banged up. Doesn't matter. They've just been playing great. Mobile quarterback. We know how the Lions do against mobile quarterbacks, at least up until this year. Not great. And I went into that game thinking, hey, Lions could very easily lose this game. What was my confidence level? I wouldn't say it was 100% going to win. But Lions end up coming out with a banged up defense, banged up secondary, right? They have guys on the street essentially playing in this game. Guys that no one knew, right? You got what? Ron Harper, Nick Whiteside in the game, this Halleck guy playing. Defense just went absolutely off in this game. They ended up holding Tampa Bay to 9 points. Tampa Bay was one of the top scoring offenses in the league coming into that week. And it was just incredible. Just another sign, and shame on me for doubting the Lions and doubting Dan Campbell, because they came out and just played awesome. And that's the makeup of a good team. It is the makeup of a good team when you can deal with these injuries. And we saw it last year with the Lions. Ton of injuries up front. Secondary was in decent shape for most of the year. And they went 15-2. Now you look at the team this year, they had no secondary in a Monday night game going up against an MVP candidate, and they win. They win pretty damn handily, too, with a banged up defense. And I got to give a shout out. This Calvin Shepard guy is pretty good. Pretty good. John Morton, offensive coordinator, jury's still out for me. Seen some good things, seen some inconsistencies, but I think the offense is going to hum. But seeing this game on Monday night with how the Lions played was awesome with defense. It was awesome. They looked more physical. They were dominating the line of scrimmage. They were getting a ton of pressures. Aiden Hutchinson was just all night harassing Baker Mayfield. DJ Reader played great. The return of Aleem McNeil, getting a ton of pressure up the gut on their center, which is just huge. It collapses the pocket. There was so many times that Aiden almost got a sack, or they forced Mayfield into a tight spot. And he managed to wiggle out either threw the ball away or threw it out of bounds. But he was under duress the entire night, and that's what made the difference. And the secondary held. The secondary played awesome. Is it sustainable over a long period of time? I don't know. But for this game, heading into a bye week, you couldn't ask for much more. And I got to give Calvin Shepard a ton of credit. First-year defensive coordinator, under the tutelage of Aaron Glenn the past couple of years. And Aaron Glenn was very well respected in this town. do I think he's better than Aaron Glenn? Aaron Glenn went 15-2 with essentially no offensive or no defensive line last year. So no. Do I think he's better than Aaron Glenn? The jury's still out. Do I think he's off to a hell of a start? Yeah, I do. And this dude's just got the energy. He's got the pizzazz. He's got the energy. He just has the ability. It appears to motivate guys, right? He's a very loud, really big into accountability. And I just thought they played awesome. I mean, look at Nick Whiteside steps in, right? This dude, Michigan guy, I think it was Saginaw Valley State, I think. Dude had an 84 overall grade on PFF. It's incredible. 80. It's like 70s, like serviceable, right? This dude had an 85. That's like elite. Played great in the slot, broke up a pass. I think the Lions had 2 picks that game, 2 picks, a forced fumble. I mean, just incredible the way that their safeties played. I mean, the top PFF scores for last game. I mean, you had Tyrus Wheat had a 95% overall grade, 95 overall grade, insane. Penei Sewell, not surprised, a 90. Nick Whiteside, 84. Jack Campbell, 84. Jahmyr Gibbs, 82. I mean, those 5 guys, if I was to give my MVP of the game, it would be those 5 guys. Wheat was all over the field, man. Wheat was all over the field, getting a ton of pressure, giving a lot of breaks, right, to whether it was Aleem McNeil coming out, Aiden Hutchinson getting a breath, Al-Qadri Muhammad, also known as Bob Muhammad on 97 won the ticket. Shout out Mike Valenti there. Just incredible. And the secondary held. They held serve. And there was a lot of times throughout this game where I was questioning some of the decision making. Campbell's going for it. Bates misses a field goal. We go for it on 4th down. We get stuffed. I thought there was, Jahmyr Gibbs was just rolling that night, right? He had a 78-yard touchdown, 80-yard touchdown run, which was just sick. He just hit the hole and was gone. I mean, it's a great angle on the safety. No way he was going to catch him. Then David Montgomery gets in there. He's gaining like 2 yards a carry. And I'm like, can we get Jahmyr Gibbs in here? Jamison Williams had no targets. It was an odd game, but just the defense held serve and the offense did enough to win the game. And when you can be down that many players for one game and you're still able to win, that to me is a sign of a great team. It is a sign of a team that is willing to push through adversity and it's next man up. A lot of people say it's next man up, but they don't actually, instill that into their players. I think it's a coping mechanism for a lot of coaches. Dan Campbell believes it. He says this out of training camp, right? He says every guy that makes this roster, both vet squad, which is what he calls the practice squad, he calls it the vet squad. That's a level of respect for the players on that roster. He knows they are going to be in and out of being active for this team. It does not matter, right? Look at Khalil Dorsey. Guy's great special teamer, safety, expected to play. Bam, he's out. He's hurt. What do you know? Well, let's just bring in 2 safeties. They haven't played at all. This Harper guy and Hallett. Okay, fantastic. Great. Hallett's got a pick. Sweet. Amik Robertson, dude's like 6'1" or whatever the hell he is, going up against top receivers in the league, playing man-to-man coverage. This guy's on a 2-year deal for like $1.5 million a year. He's been incredible. He's been awesome. And it just makes you think, okay, if the Lions are playing this good in the secondary with backup guys, what happens when the dogs get back, right? What happens when the Reeds get back and the Terrion Arnold gets back, and then you have Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph in the back end? It's what makes you think about the word that we want to say but don't want to say. It makes you think about the Super Bowl. Of course it does. It makes you think if this team can be an MVP, beat an MVP candidate like Baker Mayfield Monday night, 24-9, with a banged up defense against a great offense. They were playing great. Now they were down some receivers in the offensive line. Mike Evans went out. Abuke was dealing with a hamstring injury, and then Mike Evans or Chris Godwin did not play. But still, don't care. Do not care. No one gave the Lions any favors last year when they were hurt. I'm not doing that for Tampa Bay, but just a great performance from the Lions. I mean, first quarter, whatever you want, quarter pole of the season. I know they're 7 games in, so a little bit more than that. Obviously, almost halfway there in a 17-game season. But if you told me we were 5-2 at the break in any way, shape, or form based on the combination of the teams that we were playing, would I have taken that 1,000%? Of course I would have. There's no way that I could have not done that. I mean, if you look at the Lions right now, just in the NFC, they'd be the the 5 seed right now just because of, Green Bay's 4-1-1. San Francisco's 5-2. Eagles and Tampa are 5-2. They're both, those 3 teams are top of their division. The Lions would be the number 1 wild card at 5-2. To me, it's just the way that they're playing this year has just been just fantastic. There just hasn't been a huge drop off. And I honestly think they look a little bit better than they did last year. This is my whole being a hunter or being a hunted type situation where I think if you look at where the Lions have excelled, it's when they are the hunter. I just think they play better with that chip on their shoulder. I think when they are the favorite, I think the mentality for them is different than when Dan Campbell just has an ability to motivate guys when he can say, no one believes in you. No one thinks you have a chance. And when you can, that's what makes Dan Campbell such a great coach, is that he's able to understand the pulse and tone of his team, and he knows what buttons to push to get them ready. That's very evident in the fact that they have not lost back-to-back games in 3 years. That is a very, very challenging stat. That means you have one bad week, you are able to rally your team the next. You don't let one bad game turn into a streak, turn into a habit, turn into behavior, and your season's gone. And I just think that's incredible. And so, we'll see kind of how the rest of the season shakes out. I think if you look at the Lions' schedule, at least when the year started, again, going back to, they're 5-2. I mean, the loss to Green Bay week 1 was rattling, right? We didn't think they looked good. I was very critical of them on this podcast. I didn't think they did. They did not look ready to me. Green Bay looked like the superior team. And then you look and they go off and, roll 4 wins in a row. Now, when I look at the schedule now, I mean, Chicago, yeah, I expected to win that game. Baltimore, that was a big win. Now, I know Baltimore has since fallen, and maybe Baltimore's not as good as we thought. Lamar Jackson's been hurt, but they were ready to roll for that game. And the Lions came out and won that game 38-30. That was a statement win. You play Cleveland, who's that's a trap game. Joe Flacco started, didn't play well, but that's a home game. You end up winning. You go to Cincinnati. I was there again. Joe Burrow's playing. That's probably a much different game, but you play who's on the slate. That gets you to 4-1. You lose a tough one to Kansas City. And then you come back and beat the Bucs 24-9. I mean, I'll take that all day. I mean, look at the remaining schedule. They got Minnesota. Who knows if J.J. McCarthy coming out of the bye, if he's going to be back, or if Carson Wentz, Mr. Turnover Machine, is going to be there. You got Washington after that, maybe a revenge game. They're dealing with some injuries, though. Quarterback's dealing with the hammy issue, so we'll see if he's back. Then you go at Philadelphia. That's going to be a huge game. Then you go against the Giants. They've been pesky. You got Green Bay at home on Thanksgiving. That's going to be an awesome that's just going to be a great game against the Packers. Then you got Dallas, LA, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Chicago. I mean, the schedule's tough. The schedule is tough. But when I go through and look here, I mean, do I think they can be sniffing at that 11 wins, 12 wins? Yeah, you're damn right I do. I mean, they already got 5 wins. Like, you look at the rest of the games. Are they going to go 500? No, I think they're going to play way better than that, And with that in mind, that's why I think they could get to this 12 to 13 wins. I don't think it's impossible. And that puts them in a really good position for November, December, and into the playoffs. And the nice thing is they're, knock on wood, should be getting healthier in the secondary, which should only help them. And, we'll see what happens this year at the trade deadline, but the front's been great. A lot of the pressure's been good. Aiden looks fantastic. Aleem McNeil coming back. The linebackers look awesome. Jack Campbell looks great. Alex Anzalone's been playing great. And Derek Barnes, I mean, that's just a 3-headed monster. They've been good in coverage. They got beat up a little bit in Kansas City. Anzalone got beat on a couple picks. Meaning pick plays from the receivers, and also they played a ton more zone against Kansas City because they knew that they were down some of their corners. Lions are going to be a man-to-man team. They're going to win or lose by that. They're going to get called for penalties. They're going to get burned on some busted coverages. But that's what's going to allow them to play the aggressive defenses when they're going to play man-to-man. I think the players embrace that. I think Dan Campbell embraces that. And I think that's what has the team rolling. So we'll see what happens coming out of the break against Minnesota and Washington and Philly. Really looking forward to that Philly game in particular. But they got to go at Washington, at Philly. That's tough back to back. We'll see if Jaden Daniels is playing with the hammy and what's going on with Philadelphia. But where do I think the Lions rank right now in terms of like power rankings in the NFC? I mean, I would have them at 1 or 2 right now. I don't see why not, based on the schedule that they've had and the way that they've played. Do I think the Packers are still good? Yeah, of course I do. I don't think they're as good as they showed in week 1. I think they've had some regression. I still don't trust Jordan Love. What are the Eagles? I don't know. defending Super Bowl champs, can't help but give them credit. You look at a team like Dallas is playing really well right now. Los Angeles with Matthew Stafford, he's been playing fantastic. A team like Tampa Bay. So we'll just have to see kind of how things shake out. But really, really impressed with where the Lions are at to start the year. Let's do a quick transition to my favorite topic that I know everybody loves hearing me talk about, which is the Iser plan and the Detroit Red Wings. Sorry, I had to take a little sip of water. Their voice is getting a little hoarse here. So, getting a lot of commentary on this. Everybody thinks I'm a hater on the Red Wings. I just want to be clear. Let me just state this. This is my public address announcement. I, Robbie of Take the Points, want the Detroit Red Wings to win a Stanley Cup as bad as anybody else. End point. I love Steve Yzerman. Fantastic player for the Red Wings. Fantastic. Great. The captain, right? Hero. If my opinion that I want to have some accountability for the Red Wings makes me a bad fan, the fact that it's 7 years in and we haven't even made the playoffs, if it's incorrect for me to hold the Red Wings accountable and want more, if you want to say I'm not a fan because of that, or that I'm a hater, then call me a hater, okay? Call me what you want. I like to hold my teams accountable because if Dan Campbell went 5 years without making the playoffs, you all listening to this would be holding him accountable. And he probably wouldn't be a coach. Look at Michigan State football. Look at Jonathan Smith. He may not last in his second year. Now, why is that? It's because we're holding our coaches accountable. So I just want to get that off my chest because I want to come on here and say how much I love the Red Wings. And let me give them credit. They're playing awesome to start the year. They've been playing great. They lost a tough one last night to Buffalo, 4-2. I watched a good majority of the game. We'll do a live check-in here on kind of how things are pacing tonight. I know they were losing, I think, 2-0 last time I checked. All right, so they're down 5-0 now in the second, so they might drop their second in a row against the Islanders. Not great. We're not going to panic, okay? But I think the Wings have gotten off to a good start. When they lost that first game the way they did, 5-0 against Montreal, I think people were thinking they're about to go 0-9 to start the year. And they've been playing great. And there's been a couple reasons why. Now, this is funny that this podcast is coming out right after we're about to lose 5-0. But what's been some of the early kind of positive points for the Wings this year? You look at Cam Talbot. He's 3-0. I think he's in net tonight, so that's obviously not going to hold. But, 1.7 goals against, 9.32 save percentage, which is great. The penalty kill has been a major strength. 89, 90% penalty kill, which is, top of the league, one of the top teams in the league. To me, the offense, look at hockey, right? Score the puck, defend the puck, defend the goal, right? Simple game. It's like baseball. Simple game, right? Super simple. Anybody can do it now. This team's defense has been horrific in prior years. I mean, they're getting killed tonight 5-0, so I don't think the defense is doing them any favors. You look at what happens if you don't have a good defense. You gotta offset that with having a good offense. I mean, if you look, through a 5-2 record at least, not going to be tonight, but their goal differential, it was +4, +5, whatever it was. Now tonight, that's going to again get wiped out because as I'm talking, they're losing 5-0. But my point is, this team needs to have a positive goal differential for them to be considered a playoff team. And their offense has been great. They're averaging around, I think I see on here, 3.14 goals per game. That's near the top half of the league in offense, which is great. And here's the thing. Do I think this team's going to win the Stanley Cup this year? No, I don't. Do I want them to? You're damn right I do. Of course I do. But I think they're on their way if you look at how some of these young players have played. I mean, that's really what I wanted to highlight is just the way some of these young guys have played. And for those that maybe don't follow hockey super closely, but this Emmett Finney kid, I think he was a 7th-round pick in 2023. I mean, dude's been on the top line with Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond. He's flying across the ice. He's been playing great. I think he's got a couple goals already, a couple assists. You look at Nygaard, right? Michael Nygaard, he's a forward. He's a young winger. He's kind of being utilized in the middle of the lineup there, playing, I think, in the second, third line there. He's physical guy, high shot volume. The big one here is Pellica, right? He probably comes in with the most lore and the most respect of any of these prospects. We've been hearing about him for a couple years. He's a defenseman. He's young, poised, really good at the blue line. He ended up earning, a roster spot out of camp. You got someone like Marco Kasper. Like, we've always said this with our teams. If you're going to be in this rebuild mode and you have these great prospects, like, bring them up. And if you watch these games, you can tell the youth and the just energy that they've brought into this team has raised the stakes for everybody else, right? The guys like JT Compher or Michael Rasmussen, right? Some of these Andrew Kopp, some of these other guys, you can see how these young guys they're coming to the rink every night willing to play and ready to play. And, win or lose, you just want this team to continue to progress, right? To continue to progress, I should say. The expectation, you're damn right, should be to make the playoffs. I heard Yzerman talking yesterday on the radio to Jim Costa, and he asked a question like, do you think it's fair that fans are frustrated with you not making the playoffs? And I actually loved his answer, and he said, yeah, of course it's fair. But he said being a GM is hard, and it's unfair for him to go out there and say, yeah, we're definitely going to make the playoffs this year, because you just don't know what's going to happen. But I respected him for saying he understands fans like myself frustration with the lack of progress thus far. But I love that we brought the young kids up. I wish we would have done it last year. Like, it's a bolt of energy, a shot in the arm for this team to get some of these young guys in here, and they're playing great, and they don't look overmatched, in my opinion. You play these guys now, so an Emmett Finney and a Nygaard and a Pellica and Marco Kasper, Danielson when he gets healthy, when he comes back. Now when you get to these games that are going to be really, really matter in January and February and hopefully March, that these guys are just more experienced and ready for the moment, so that you can complement a guy like Dylan Larkin, complement a guy like Patrick Kane or Alex DeBrincat, right? That's where this comes into play for them. And I think that's where you look at a guy like Dylan Larkin. I've been very critical of Dylan Larkin, very critical. Is he the right guy to lead this team? Is he the right guy to lead this team? And you look about how well he's been playing. He's been playing great so far to start the year. Really, really has looked just extremely strong. He's flying around the ice. You can tell that he really just sets the tone for this team, right? He's got 12 points, 5 goals, and 7 assists through the first 7 games, plus minus a +9. He's averaging a point per game pace at 1.71. I mean, you can just tell he's on the power play. The other night he had the OT winner. I mean, you can hear it in my voice, guys. I get excited because I want this team to be good, and I love that we have the youth up. It's like we said for the Tigers when it was like, bring Torque up, bring Skubal up, bring all the young guys up, right? Bring them all here. Bring McGonigal up. Like, just give a shot in the arm, because I'd rather see these young guys developing if we're going to have these challenging years. I'd rather have it develop with the young guys than signing some veteran, the Ben Sherratts of the world, to some 7-year deal to be here to just block a spot. And so we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, the barometer for me is make the playoffs. Make the playoffs. And Yzerman said it itself. When does he feel the rebuild will be over? I heard him on the radio say it. It's when he said we are consistently a playoff team, which I agree with that sentiment. I agree with that. It's time now. It's time. It's time for this team to progress. We are freaking hockey town. We are the Detroit Red Wings. Steve Yzerman was a messiah as a GM before he came to Detroit. My faith and hope is that he's going to figure this out. That these young guys we've seen come up, 7th round pick in Emmett Finney. I mean, that's what you want to see from this guy, right? You got to find needles in the haystack. That's what's going to make him great. I want the Red Wings to be in a position at the trade deadline that Steve Yzerman has to make a choice. Is he going to go all in quotes? Maybe not truly all in, but go make this team better. I want this team to give Steve Yzerman no excuses to not go out and strive to be a Stanley Cup or deep playoff run contributor or just potential team that can do that. That's what I want. And Larkin said it last year and got him in trouble, right? Of like, he felt like they should have done more at the deadline. And you know what, Dylan? Give your GM a reason to go in for it, because I will give this to Steve. He is smart. And Steve is smart in the fact he's not going to risk, very similar to Scott Harris, he's not going to hedge his long-term future over a short-term burst to potentially just make the playoffs, right? He wants his team to be consistently good. That's been Yzerman's MO. It's what he said in the public. And so if that's going to be the case, then when the team is in a position to now excel, that's where I expect Steve to make the move, and I'm confident that he will. And he just needs to see it from this team. It's almost like this team has to prove to Steve Yzerman that they are willing of him, mortgaging some of the future to win now. And, we'll see what happens. They drop, they lose tonight. They're still going to be 5-3. I think they still got 10 points. They're second in the conference. Like, I'm good with that. This team, just avoid these big ruts where you lose 6-7 in a row, you win 9 in a row, and then you lose 8 in a row. It's just this fluctuation that we saw the last couple of years. I just want a consistent, competitive team this year that is positioned for the playoffs and clearly got better. And if we can do that, develop the youth, make the playoffs, get this team some experience, see what happens, get a little frisky in the playoff, that's mission success for me. Now Yzerman can go do his thing. Let the maestro go be the maestro. Let the magician go do his thing. Even though Igor Larionov was the magician. But still, you get my point, right? Let's let the captain cook here. So anyways, I'm happy with the Red Wings start. I've been dialing in. I'm a huge Wings fan. Don't want that to get lost here, people. Okay? Huge Wings fan. Love the Wings. Chris Ilitch, can't stand him. Cannot stand him. But I love the Wings. I don't want the dead wing era to come back. I want the Wings to be great. So we will see what happens. Whenever I talk Wings on here, of course, tonight I talk about how much I appreciate how well they've been playing. They're about to drop their second straight and lose 5-0 to the Islanders, which just, damn it, that would happen tonight. But anyways, moving past the Red Wings, last thing I want to touch on real quick. I know I've touched on a lot of different topics tonight. And we'll probably do a deeper dive of the Pistons next week, but I want to touch quickly on just some Tigers updates here. I thought it was really fascinating. Listen to Scott Harris's end of season press conference in depth, and he give the guy credit. Sat there for an hour, and I watched the entire thing because I'm a loser like that. It was him and AJ Hinch, but it was Scott Harris mostly talking, and just thought a lot of interesting comments from him. A lot of discussion around Tarek Skubal. Going to extend him, going to not. Scott Harris took the high road, which he knew he would. Said Skubal's great. Skubal's important to this team. Wasn't going to talk about contract extensions. Flash forward 3 days later, article comes out, says the Tigers are $200 million off or in negotiation in between the contract that they want to give Skubal versus what he wants. Do I think that's true? No, I don't. I think it's pushed by Scott Boras, his agent, and I think this is just a negotiating tactic. This Tarek Skubal thing is going to be the biggest story of the offseason, not only maybe for the Tigers, but really in all of baseball of what are they going to do. He's got 1 year left. I talked about it on the pod after they lost. That was more of an emotional response for me. I just cannot see in my heart of hearts the Tigers signing Tarek Skubal to a long-term deal. And there's been a lot of criticism too, because I thought it was really fascinating. Toronto Blue Jays, Seattle Mariners played 7 games. Max Scherzer pitching for Toronto. He was like 5th inning, gets into a little bit of trouble. His manager comes out to get him. And Mad Max throws a tantrum on the mound. Tantrum. You are not taking me out of this game. You could see he was swearing. Both of his eyes, which are different colors. I mean, this dude just looked like he was about to rip his manager's head off and was like, you are not taking me out of this game. I am met for this moment. Go back to the dugout, essentially, is what he said. Scherzer stays in, ends up getting the out. I think he pitched 5 innings or whatever it was. But how does this relate to Tarek Skubal? You go back to that unfortunate loss against Seattle when Skubal, was done after 7 innings or 6 innings, whatever the heck it was. And you see a guy like Max Scherzer refusing to come out of the game. You can't help but think in the back of your mind, was Skubal thinking about that contract when he was not pitching? Was he hesitant to go back out there because he's worried he's going to get an injury before he gets his big contract? Matt Scherzer's been paid. He's going to get paid by Washington for the next 20 years, I think. I mean, dude's made like $400 million in his career. Do I blame the guy? No. Meaning Skubal, I don't blame him. Guy doesn't want to get hurt, but did not resonate well, I do not think, with Detroit fans when people saw that, because you're saying this dude's like, do not take me out of the game. And then you have Skubal not out there fighting when the team was trying to win. Now, listen, they had their chances. It's not why they lost. I don't want to harp on that again. I'm just saying, as we go into these negotiations, I think that's the very unique thing about Tarek Skubal is, what is the public's perception going to be of the Tigers' stance on this? Because if they let him walk, there's 3 options, right? You sign him to a long-term deal, you trade him, you let him play out this year, or you surround him with talent and you just go for it. And then you let him walk and you get a comp pick at the end of the year. And depending on which three of those scenarios, and I have my thoughts on what I think the Tigers should do and ultimately will do. But you wonder if the fans are going to say, well, I get it. He's not a Max Scherzer. He's not a JV. The guy doesn't want the ball in a big moment, right? He was tired or what have you. And again, I'm not giving Scoople shit here. But I think it raises a question in people's mind. And do I think it's money related? Sure, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what works inside Taylor Scoople's mind. I just know he's been a great pitcher, but I know he can't get past the 6th or 7th inning, and he throws 95 pitches and he's out of the game, even in the biggest moments. Like, that was the biggest moment of all moments in that game. Must-win game. Could have used another couple outs. He didn't go back in the game, right? It's frustrating to see. I don't hold it against the guy transparently, which may be surprising for some of you to hear. Just because he was so good for us all year, it just feels disingenuous for me to sit on here and bitch about not going out for 2 more pitches or 2 more, another 10 pitches. But it is what it is. Some people want to die in that hill. That's not going to be me. But I think when you think about the long-term extension of this guy, is that a game next year? If he's got a $400 million deal, he goes out and throws till his arm falls off. Maybe. We may not know the answer to that. But I think I'll see what it, be interested to see what it does to his value on the open market. I still think he's going to make a ton of money. I mean, people are saying $400 million. Just real quick, my thoughts on that. Listen to that Scott Harris press conference. I just do not see a world in which they're signing one player to a $400 million contract. I just don't see it. I think if it was me and I was the Tigers, what I would probably do, truthfully, is I think I would surround Taylor Skubal with a lot of talent this year, and I would go after it one more time with Skubal and then let him walk. As much as I want to sign him, if this team is only going to get $120 million payroll, I have a lot of trouble having a third of that taken up by one player, because I think it will ultimately limit what they're able to do in the future because of that. Because I want them to be able to go spend. And so I think the idea will be, let's surround him. Let's get after it this year. If you're out of it at the deadline, you can trade him. I don't think you'll lose as much value as people think of trading him now versus then. It's still just either a half a season or a full season. It's not like he's got 5 years left. And, I believe in the sum of the parts, and I think they have a lot of needs offensively. We'll see what happens to these young guys, and they're going to need to sign more pitchers. They could go out and sign 2 studs this season in the offseason, even with what's going on in Skubal, and maybe you have a 3-headed monster at the top of your rotation. You got a guy like Casey Mize and Reese Olson rounding out 4-5. If Flaherty opts in, you got some options here. So anyways, I thought that was interesting on the just the paradox of Max Scherzer, older guy, been in the league for however many years he's been, feels like 20 years, right? Refuses to come out of a game. A guy like Taylor Skubal doesn't even get out of the 7th and doesn't even pitch in the 8th. And you're watching these other games, guys going complete games, throwing 110, 115 pitches. That's just not going to be Skubal. He's already had 2 major arm issues. But man, that was just tough to see. It was tough to see, and the timing could not have been worse for this whole situation, the debate that happened. That may go down in history, the debate of I can't believe Skubal didn't come back out. Again, I'm not going to die in that hill because I think he did a lot for our team. But anyways, other highlights for me, and then I'll wrap here. I know we're at an hour, just coming out of that Scott Harris press conference. I think he got a lot of questions around the trade deadline. Does he regret, not doing more at the deadline? I mean, the way he kind of phrased it is what he regretted at the trade deadline is that he didn't foresee the offensive slump and pitching injuries that were essentially coming for the Tigers. He didn't see the regression that was going to happen. Had he known the regression was going to happen, there may have been more of an appetite to make a move. But at the time that they were at the deadline, he felt like they had a top 10 offense, which they did. They had one of the best records in the league. And so he chose to do incremental adds instead of the big push, which the way it sounds like, if reading through the tea leaves in that press conference, got really specific on, they couldn't obviously name the player, but talking about players specifically. And Harris said, some of the guys that we were going to trade for, a name or two, would have required us to give up someone that contributed down the stretch for us. I think what he was talking about was Eugenio Suarez, who ultimately went to Seattle, and the fact that Seattle, when he got traded, the team that he got traded from, I don't know why I'm blanking out of where he was at, wanted Troy Melton. I think it was Troy Melton or Wenzel Perez or some combination of that. And Eugenio Suarez didn't play well down the stretch. Did not strike out a lot. I mean, he had a big homer in the playoffs, but didn't play up to the level. And so that was kind of Scott Harris's backing, saying, hey, we would have had to give up an everyday player to go get him. And that's why he didn't. But, he talked a lot around, controlling the strike zone, which is something I've talked about both offensively and, pitching, making sure that they're controlling the strike zone. And the offense regressed the last month and a half of the season. And, they're going to have to make some decisions on guys like Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson. You bring back a guy like Gleyber Torres, I doubt it, with, McGonigal and some of these young guys coming up. But, I think it's going to be a fascinating offseason for the Tigers. I think they know they need to add more. Scott Harris made it very clear. He knows they need more. They need more veteran hitters like a guy like Gleyber Torres. They need better, pinch hitters. And this thing that like the Tigers aren't going to spend. They spent a shit ton of money last offseason. They really did. There was 1-year deals, but they spent money. They've stayed away from the long-term commitment. Now they went after Bregman last year. Didn't get him. Bregman, who's also a free agent now. He opted out with Boston. So there's a chance we could still see Alex Bregman back with the Tigers. So big offseason again for the Tigers. But just want to touch on that with Scooble. I thought it was just a fascinating discussion. We'll see what happens. Again, in my heart of hearts, do I want him here? Do I wish he could be here? Yeah, but do I think it's in the best interest of the team to sign a player to a 10-year deal, someone that's already got arm issues, is, after emotionally getting over that last game? I just don't think it is. We're not the Yankees. We're not the Red Sox. We're not the Dodgers. If we're only going to get $130 million, like I said, I think it's got to be spread out to multiple players. For one Scooble, you could get, 2 everyday players and maybe a halfway decent pitcher. And that's just the way I think they're going to play it. May live to eat those words, but we'll find out what happens. So anyways, I'm at an hour and 1 minute. That's all I got. I know Michigan State this weekend. To be honest, guys, I was going to come on here and talk about it. I just don't have a lot of juice for it. I think the teams are not that good. I mean, Michigan State really in a hole. I don't think Michigan's that good. Sharon Moore, I could go off for an hour about him. He's not Jim Harbaugh, obviously. And I think, Michigan State, I think Jonathan Smith, I think his days are numbered. I have a hard time seeing him make it out of this season. I know he's got like a $35 million buyout, but I think just high level on the game. I mean, we'll see what happens. I mean, Michigan's got a great run game, which I think ultimately could be the difference here. I think they're favored by 14.5. I mean, look at the numbers here. Michigan's 22nd in the FBS and rushing yards per game. Michigan State's 107th. I mean, turnover margin, Michigan's +10. Michigan State's -6. Rushing defense, not great. Michigan's ranked 15th. I mean, passing, Bryce Underwood's still a young guy. So long story short, I think the future is still more bright for Michigan. I don't think either team is that good. Michigan could definitely still sneak into the playoff. We'll see what happens. I just don't really care, to be honest. I'll watch it, pull for a good game, but I think we live for 2026 and see what's going to happen. But anyways, that's all I got tonight. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hopefully we'll get Steven Wilson back on next week. Hopefully you enjoyed this pod. Good to be back with you all. Again, Lions on bye this week, so we'll try to get on early next week, maybe do a preview of the game against the Vikings. Let's see where the Red Wings sit. And we'll talk about Michigan State and maybe a little Pistons preview coming as well. I know the NBA just kicked off too, so I want to kind of do some highlights on the Pistons. I know they dropped their opener last night, but yeah. Anyways, all right, this was great. Rate, review, subscribe. Please continue to listen. Follow us on all the socials. You guys know the drill. We appreciate you. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next time on another episode of Take the Points, a true underdog podcast. All right, guys, we out. See ya.